Hello, everyone, and welcome to this short little webinar on container gardening. So we'll be covering these agenda items, including the benefits of container gardening, what you should grow in your garden, how to choose the right containers, what kind of soil to put in the containers, and then, of course, how to care for the plants, what watering and sun requirements are needed. So first of all, let's chat about the benefits of container gardening. So container gardening is wonderful for beginners because it's a really easy place to start. It's not overwhelming. You can start with one simple tomato plant or one simple herb like basil or something that's really actually difficult to kill. So if you have brown thumbs, starting with a container garden is a great way to start. Or maybe you've been gardening for a long time, but you've just never grown any vegetables or herbs or edibles, period. So this is a great place to start. And you can grow anything from lettuce to a fruit tree in a container if you'd like. It's a lot less work. It takes a lot less time to care for a container garden than it would, say, a raised bed or even, of course, just planting a garden in long rows. That's an awful lot of work, especially when you're new to it. You can grow a lot in a small space, even if you don't have a yard. If you have a balcony or a deck or a front porch, somewhere that does need about 6 hours of sun or more per day, then you can grow a garden. It's a convenient location, so I have a lot of containers out on my deck, and it's right out the door from the kitchen, so it's really convenient. Otherwise, it would be way across the yard where I get sun, and I'd have to kind of walk all the way across the yard to get to it, so I love having it so close. It makes it much easier to treat pests and disease. So if there's a pest infestation, you can just pull the plant right out of the one container and get rid of the whole plant and start over. Or if it's a disease, say fungus, for example, it's easy to treat and just pull one out instead of, say, a whole garden in rows of, say, 25 tomato plants. And if there's an insect issue or a disease, you're going to lose all of it. So it's a great way to keep it under control. It's portable. I have a lot of my larger containers on wheels so that I can move them around based on if it's raining too much, I can just pull them under shelter. If throughout the season I get more sun in certain areas of my deck than others, then I'll just relocate them a bit. They can be decorative, and I'll show you a picture here coming up, but I use these containers to decorate my deck, and I mix some flowers and ornamentals in with the edibles, and it looks lovely. I can help keep your vegetables and edibles away from critters like deer and rabbits and everything else. When it's raised up in the container, you can move it to where it's secure, and they just tend to leave them alone more so than when they're in the ground anyway. And of course, it's kid-friendly. It makes it really easy for kids. They can sit down in a chair. It's more their level. They can have a container just for them with grandkids or your own kids. It's a wonderful activity. So let's talk about what to grow. First and foremost, and I talk about this in my Garden for the Health of It book, is make sure you're growing what you and your family love to eat. And I always say, if you don't like tomatoes, then don't grow tomatoes just because you think every garden should have tomatoes. You want to choose things that you're going to use a lot of, and you're going to be bummed out when the harvest is gone, as opposed to, say, zucchini, for example. You really have to love zucchini to grow it because you get so much of it. And it's such a bummer when it's wasted. So you want to make sure it's going to be something that you love to eat. Also, think about, how do you spend your money in the produce section at the grocery store? I think I spend the most money on kale because I use kale in smoothies and salads and other things, and spinach too. So I definitely grow those two things. Grow items from the Dirty Dozen list. So we talked a little bit about this already, but if you go to the Environmental Workers Group website, and you just Google it, you'll find it. There's a list of the top 12 items that you really can't wash the pesticides and herbicides and chemicals off of, that you really should be buying organic. So if you need to buy organic anyway, you might as well try to grow it at home organic. So that's a great thing to think about. What will thrive in the space and conditions that you have available? So for example, my deck barely gets 6 hours of sun per day. So I have a lot of my green leafies out there. Tomatoes do okay, but I cannot grow peppers or squash or anything like that back there, even though I'd love to, because it just doesn't get enough sun. Also, if it's going to be in the blazing sun, you want to, think about how often you're going to have to water that poor little container if it's getting beat up by sun. Grow nutrient-dense produce. This is one of my favorites, of course. And there's a system called the ANDI scoring system. It stands for Aggregate Nutrient Density Index, and we're going to talk about that next. So what is this ANDI scoring system? Well, Dr. Joel Fuhrman coined the equation that health equals nutrients divided by calories. So what this means is how to get the most nutrient bang for your calorie buck, okay? So we want to choose foods to fill our plate that have a ton of nutrients and not empty calories. So of course, anything that let's just say a cookie, for example, has a ton of calories but barely any nutrients. We want to choose foods, especially produce, fruits and vegetables that are high in nutrients and lower in calories. So Dr. Joel Fuhrman came up with that. He wrote the book, Eat for Health. I think he's wonderful. His website is drfuhrman.com. So check him out. There's a lot of wonderful free resources on his website. And I know this chart is a bit difficult to see here as I kind of stretched it out to fit on the slide. But you can see here, this scoring system, the highest score is 1,000 and the lowest score is 1. So this is kind of a good snapshot here, I think. Kale and collard greens are up there at 1,000 points each. So they have the most amount of nutrients for their calories. If I scroll down here, I look at strawberries, only 212, which is surprising. Even blueberries is not as high up on the list as you would think. And then if you look over here, the lowest item on this snapshot is just cola. So pop with a scoring of 1 compared to kale at 1,000. So I just think this is a wonderful system to take a look at while you're considering what to grow in your garden. You want to grow things, if I click back to the previous slide here, you want to grow things that are all of these items already talked about: what you love to eat, how you spend your money at the store, things that are already on the Dirty Dozen list, what will work in the space and conditions that you have available, and then of course, what's the most nutrient dense. So after you kind of figure out your list of what you might want to grow, and my recommendation is to always start small, maybe 2 or 3 things, maybe just 1 thing. And it's not too late in the middle of the summer here to get started. There's a garden planner, and it's a free tool, and it's an online tool that the Gardener Supply Company puts out, and it's on their website. I'm going to try to click over here in a second and show you how it works. But with their free online planner, you can design a super productive vegetable garden based on square foot gardening techniques, which we'll talk about square foot gardening in a second, instead of traditional rows. Just drag and drop crops to the planting grid, and the planner fills in the number of plants that you need. So that way you know how many plants to put in one container. The program also provides a plant profile for each plant that you choose, describing the growing conditions and information on harvesting and that sort of thing. So I included the link down here below. And give me one moment here. I'm going to try to just click over for us. There we go. I think I got it figured out. Thanks for your patience. Okay, so what we're looking at here is the gardeners.com. You can see the URL up here, and it's the website for the Gardner Supply Company. So if you've never heard of the Gardner Supply Company, I think I receive a catalog from them about once or twice a week. And they have wonderful gardening products and tools and just fun stuff. But you'll see up here across their menu, all the way over here to the right, there's a kitchen garden planner. So when you click on the kitchen garden planner, you are faced with two options. When I scroll down, it asks me if I want to choose a pre-planned garden or to design my own garden. So I want to design my own garden. So I'll click here. All right, and what it shows you is a menu of items. Okay, I was playing around with this a little earlier, and you can see here's my square foot garden. And although we're talking about container planting right now and not square foot gardening, this concept still works great for a container garden. So each of these squares is equal to 1 square foot. So once you find out how many plants fit into 1 square foot, then you know how many plants you can put in a container about the size of 1 square foot. Makes sense, right? So I pulled in, this is spinach, and it looks like there's 9 that you can place in 1 square foot, 1 cauliflower plant, 1 tomato plant, and 2 lemon thyme plants. Let's see if I just chose beets, how many would fit in 1 square foot. So there we have it. We have 9 again. And you can scroll through the menu by clicking the next button. See what else would I want to use as an example here. A pepper plant, just 1. How about a sweet potato? Just 1. Swiss chard, 2. So that helps you determine whatever you want to grow, pull it into this. You can see how many fit into 1 square foot, and you can get your planning done. And what's even better about this free tool is when you scroll down, it lists all of the plants that I chose and pulled to my garden, and it tells me, it gives me a little plant profile. So tomatoes, for example, if I was going to plant the seeds indoors, it would tell me when to do that, when to plant the seedlings outside, how far apart to space them, the days to harvest. So from transplanting to harvesting, how many days does that take? And then it gives you a hint for each plant. For tomatoes, for example, remove the lower leaves before planting and bury extra stem. Spinach, the hint is spinach bolts in hot weather. That is so true. It does that. And once it bolts, then it's bitter. So harvest early. Keep soil cool and moist with mulch or shade netting. So what I do is I just love planting green leafies, especially spinach and kale, in containers, because then I just move it over where it's not getting beat down on by the sun once the middle of summer hits, and you can grow spinach and kale all summer long, not just in the spring and fall. So that's another great thing, where if you're planting it in a traditional garden in rows, there'd be no way to really shade it. It's more difficult. So I just wanted to share this resource with you, but also keep in mind, and I'll show you here in a second, that I like to plant flowers along with my edibles. So I'm going to switch us back over here. There we go. Okay. So I think that's a wonderful tool that you'll enjoy. And again, it's if you just go to gardeners.com and follow that trail I just showed you, or I did provide the exact URL to that page if you'd like it. So containers, this is the photo I was talking about. This is on my deck out back, And this, let's see, this front one has, looks like kale, 2 kale plants and a lettuce plant with some pansies. And so this was in the spring. I had some pansies that actually overwintered and they were already in the container still. And I just added in early spring the kale plants. And back here, I believe it's spinach. Here's another kale plant. And then when I set those up around, you know, the furniture out on the deck, it looks beautiful. And the great thing about green leafies is you just go out there and you kind of mow them down, not all the way, and you have to keep some leaves on or the plant won't survive, but you can harvest several times for, you know, weeks and weeks and weeks. So speaking of containers, these are pretty large containers that I have, and I like to use terracotta and ceramic because once you start getting into metal and plastic, especially plastic, I don't feel it's safe for growing edibles in them. I feel like the materials leach into the soil and are sucked up by the plant. So I like to use terracotta or ceramic, primarily ceramic. And you want to make sure, by the way, that your containers have drainage, of course. So these containers, when I purchased them, did not have any drainage, which I don't understand, but I just had my husband drill holes on the bottom, and then you can't really see it here, but I have the little container dollies that I just keep under them all the time, and I can move them around. So I like to use primarily large containers like this. Even though these type of plants don't need a deep root system, I still prefer the larger containers, and I do fill them up all the way with soil because you don't have to water them as much, and the plants tend to do better. Small containers are ideal for green leafies, but keep in mind you'll have to water it more often. Choose deep containers for root vegetables and tall plants. So tomatoes, or I even have eggplant, and if you did peppers or any type of vining plant that needs some support that's sticking high up out of the container, obviously you would want a larger container so it doesn't tip. You know, if you're going to try potatoes or anything like that, a tall container would be important. So the container soil mix. Down here at the bottom, you can see this website that I'm recommending. It's squarefootgardening.com. And I went through a certification actually to become a square foot gardening instructor, and it is good stuff. So I like, you know, beautiful containers like this. Again, is out on my back deck, but it's also fun to learn more about that square foot gardening method. That would be a good next step once you do a little bit of container gardening. But I'm sharing the resource with you now because there's a lot of great tips there, and you will use the same sort of soil in a container as you would in a square foot garden. So you want to have some sort of organic mix. When in doubt, and if you want the easy way out, just go to a big box store and purchase an organic mix, a couple of bags. Just make sure it says container mix and not garden soil mix, because that will be too heavy and dense, and the plants won't do well. You definitely need a container mix. But you also want to add some healthy materials such as compost, which you can buy organic compost at most big box stores now, or make it yourself. Rice hulls, wood chips, worm castings. That's a great, it's similar to compost. It's just a great feeder for the soil. The plants love it. And core from coconut husk instead of peat moss, because peat moss is not replaceable, or very slowly. It's not a great product to use because we're just destroying the environment by using it. So this core from coconut husk is a great alternative. And you just want a nice mix. You want it to be light and fluffy, so that it holds the water better, and then you don't have to water quite as often. So I get a lot of questions about, well, then what do I feed my plants? There is a product, my favorite, called Moo Poo Tea, believe it or not, MOOPOOT. And it's just a huge tea bag with organic cow manure. I actually met the woman before at a couple of garden shows. She's fabulous. And it's just an organic way. You take like a large um, 5-gallon bucket or something, and you just let it steep in there. You just fill up the bucket with water from the hose, let it steep in there for at least 24 hours, and you're ready to just dump it on the plants, and they love it. It's good, good stuff. So I don't really feed my edibles, fertilizer or anything like that. I just try to take really great care of them, make sure they have enough water and are happy, and feed them compost or the Moo-Poo tea or worm castings. So how do we care for containers then? So you want to check the plant profile. So you can use that gardener supply tool. You saw how there's a little bit of information there for you. Or just Google tomato plant care, and you will find so much information. And the best place to check is your local Master Gardener's website, the Extension Office website. They usually have a hotline as well where you can call certain days and times and talk to a Master Gardener. And it is really simple. Again, I'll say it again, it's so important to start small, because when it gets too overwhelming, you just want to throw in the towel, just like anything else, right? Just like exercise. It's just too much commitment. I'm just forgetting it all. And a great place to start, the easiest place to start, is with herbs, because most herbs don't need a lot of water. In the Garden for the Health of It book, you will see some more information on that, but they're a great place to start. And then maybe something simple and highly, kind of like the wow factor is a tomato plant. There's nothing better than a fresh tomato from your own garden. So yeah, start small and check the plant profile, and consider contacting your Master Gardener Extension Office for more information. Also consider putting wheels or some sort of method so that your containers are portable, because you'll want to move them out of the rain so they don't get waterlogged and die. You'll want to move them out of too much sun, not enough sun, and so on. It just makes life so easy. It's really a dreamy way to garden. And then you probably will need to water up to at least once per day during the heat of the summer. So keep that in mind. I have lots of friends in my neighborhood, and that's my mother-in-law in particular. She comes over and is the garden nanny while I'm out of town. And I do the same for her. So it's not impossible. It is pretty simple. And they're also self-watering containers I thought I would quickly mention. That's probably not a great place to start. Start easy and small. But if you find that you really love it, check into that. And even on that Gardener Supply Company website, they have some self-watering containers. So thought that would be a great place to get everybody started. And please let me know if you have any questions, and go out there and get growing.